For a while now it's been, how do you solve a problem like Imran Khan? A generation or two of British audiences remember Imran Khan as an iconic cricketing celebrity and international playboy. He wooed and wed society princess Jemima Goldsmith, and we were told they lived a life of enviable glamour. In a plot twist of note, Khan put the glitz behind him and embarked on a successful career as a politician, emerging in time as a man of his people back in his homeland of Pakistan. He reached and held the office of Prime Minister. He paid for the building of cancer hospitals there, out of his own pocket. People love him there. Back in March last year, Khan deviated from the script when he refused to condemn Russia for her invasion of Ukraine. Coming up with lines of his own, he asked of the West, "What do you think of us? Are we your slaves?" Warming to his theme, he said, "We are friends with Russia, and we are also friends with America. We are friends with China and with Europe. We are not in any camp." He said Pakistan would remain neutral and would work with those trying to end the war in Ukraine. The US accused Khan's Pakistan of what they called aggressive neutrality, which sounds like an oxymoron to me, but what do I know? By now, Imran Khan has been deposed as Prime Minister and is presently in jail. Whether he will emerge from behind bars to perform a third act is anyone's guess, but the audience aren't holding their breath. If all the world's a stage, then surely the US is the West End, or the end of the West. What's happening to that country now would be comedy or a downright farce if it wasn't actually a tragedy. Former President Donald Trump has been being savaged by the so-called liberal critics since at least 2016. They never get tired of pointing out all the flaws in his performance, despite the fact he was a real crowd pleaser for millions of his countrymen. The most recent plot has him apparently destined for jail, accused of everything under the sun, while present President Joe Biden heads a family whose corruption is exposed for all to see. Their dodgy dealings are centre stage, brightly spotlit, and yet the audience is not supposed to notice. Who are they kidding? It's not just the big set pieces that are exposed by the unforgiving light of online chatter and information sharing. Even the throwaway gags are failing to land. Back here in Britain, former COVID medical officer Jonathan Van Tam, JVT as he was described on the flyer for the show, has exited stage left, one of many bad actors pursued not by a bear, but by uncounted numbers of those injured or dead on account of the injectables he helped push, while, in my opinion, wearing the costume of a government advisor, and is presently demonstrating the breadth of his acting skills by taking on a leading role for big pharma giant Moderna. How we laughed. All together now. Oh no, we didn't. Much to the annoyance of the scriptwriters, a bunch dismissed at first as mere hecklers, namely GB News, have been stealing some of the limelight. In just the last few weeks, we've seen to the humiliating climb down of high and mighty bankers who entitled themselves to deny bank accounts to, and so effectively make non-people of, all manner of law-abiding and tax-paying citizens of this country. And this week, GB News handed over a petition signed by 250,000 viewers demanding a guaranteed secure future for cash in this country. No sooner did it land than the Treasury, no less, issued a statement saying GB News had got the parlous situation of cash spot on and declaring that action would be taken to protect the notes and pounds. As our economist Liam Halligan has been saying all week, 2 million people in this country have no bank account and 10% of households no regular access to the internet, so that cash is nothing less than their lifeblood. You'd want to hope the Treasury aren't just playing to the gallery, throwing sweeties into the crowd as a distraction, and only time will tell if their pledge is just another act, another line they can score out later on. Gaslight is a 1938 play about a husband who uses lies and cheap tricks to try and persuade his wife she's going mad so that he might steal from her. Among other things, he tampers with the gaslighting in their home, turning it steadily down. When she says it's growing dimmer and dimmer, he tells her she must be insane. As is often said now, we, the audience, are presently being gaslighted by a whole cast of bad actors posing as our leaders. I say it so they can say it's us going mad while they dismantle the world around us and line their pockets along the way. But the more we see of their deceit, the more the shadows are illuminated instead by the conversations we can have with each other, by the truth to be found in the online world and elsewhere, the more they overact, and desperately, until they're no more convincing than the cardboard sets they've surrounded themselves with. Here's the thing, Despite their wish we were still in the dark, the lights are on in the auditorium. I say the show's over, whether those bad actors accept it or not. The band stopped playing, the lights are well and truly on, and we are tired of the fiction. There's nothing else for it but to leave them to it, to walk out into the light of day and get about the business of real life. That's all, folks. That's my opinion, and you're free to disagree if you like. Keep your tweets and emails coming through the show. You can email gbviews@gbnews.com, and you can tweet me as well at gbnews, and I'll try to get to your comments later in the show. Laura, what do you make of what I had to say? Laura Dodsworth, of course, you need no introduction to this show.
No,
Laura
I
Dodsworth,
always need
author
the
and
introduction.
commentator.
Well, I mean, you are the monologue man. If all the world's a stage, you do a jolly good soliloquy. I think the reason that your monologues are popular is because they are these very poetic elegies, but with an artery of anger. You know, I hear that and it resonates as it does for many thousands of people.
But do you think we've been subjected? I think it's a fiction. I think we've been lied to, and there's been a pretense around reality that's now being exposed.
Yes. Now, don't worry, I wasn't going to compliment you for too much longer. I was just going to say, I feel myself having been sliding off the fence a little on this issue myself. You know, I recently just changed the introduction on my Substack, and I said we live in extraordinary times. They are nothing short of apocalyptic. No, I don't mean the world's boiling, not that. I mean, in the original Greek meaning of the word, we live in a time of an unveiling and a revealing and a laying bare of truth. And more people see things to be artificially constructed. And what it is it's a grand deception. It's a macabre play on our innocence, our trust, and our human biases and our fallibility. It's why I just wrote my last book, Free Your Mind, The New World of Manipulation, How to Resist It, because I don't think we've ever lived in a time like this. I tell you what, though, you do say that we're all working it out because of the internet, but I actually think it's more than that. I don't think it's just that we're seeing into dark corners that were kept dark and secret. I think that they are also drawing back the curtain. There's one chapter in my book called Be Skeptical of Big Brother, and we open, Patrick Fagan, my co-author, and I, we open with a US Army recruitment video, and it's called Ghosts in the Machine, and it says all the world's a stage. And you've never seen anything like it. You would think this US Army recruitment video is actually a trailer for the latest horror film, maybe part of the Batman franchise or a video game, but it's not. It's a recruitment video to the US 4th Army PSYOP division. More and more, we're being told about PSYOPs, about propaganda. You know, the Nudge Unit publishes its reports. We live in this time which is so post-factual that they're even talking about what they do while they do it.
How does that work in their favour? I mean, why would a magician reveal how his tricks work? What's the gain?
Well, only some of it. I tell you what, if we're being told how some things work, I do wonder how much else is left in the shadows. I mean, it's just like a little small detail, but another thing I noticed last year was the National Intelligence for Military Aviation Unit. I might have got that a bit wrong, but it's essentially one of the US Army aviation units, changed its logo for one day last autumn. It changed it from aircraft to a collection of aircraft and a flying saucer. And I contacted their press division at the time and said, oh, what's this? What's this new logo about? And eventually, my request gets passed around like a hot grenade between sergeant majors of publicity, and they come back and they say it's an incorrect logo posted erroneously. Well, of course it's not. You can't tell me that the US government erroneously posted a logo with a flying saucer on it. So lots of these little things happen. What does it mean? I don't know. But I tell you what, tyranny stops when people call out the truth. So, the last defence against tyranny is to witness, to speak up and to call out the truth.
And it's easy.
It is easy.
You don't have to remember anything. Up next, how do you solve a problem like Imran Khan, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, is serving 3 years in jail, but no one's talking about it? Why? I'll be joined by Wasiq from the Henry Jackson Society to explain. Don't go anywhere.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You've already been in touch with some thoughts. Paul in Middlesex says, love the all the world's a stage analogy to describe the current times across the globe, Neil. Just shows how timeless Shakespeare is, indeed. Who else have we got here? Mark, the blackout curtains are twitching, the lights are coming on. Michael in Barnsley says, the parallel of Imran Khan and Donald Trump is interesting. Something I'd not thought of before. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. Both celebrities turned politicians turned into criminals. How bizarre. Here we are then, and first up, what is going on in Pakistan? Who are the key players and what are their objectives? Pakistan is, amongst much else, a nuclear power and therefore definitely worth paying attention to. For people of my generation, Imran Khan, former Prime Minister of Pakistan, but more recently imprisoned on all manner of charges, was a glamorous celebrity leading what seemed to be a gilded life. What happened and what is happening in his homeland? To help me understand is my first guest this evening, Wasiq, Research Fellow at King's College War Department. Wasiq, thanks for coming in. Bring us up to speed. What is happening? What has happened to Imran Khan?
So what's seemed to have happened is that Imran Khan has had some charges being brought against him, and he's been found guilty of selling or purchasing state assets, and has now been found guilty as a result of that. And what that means is for the next 3 years he's going to be imprisoned, and for the next 5 years he won't be able to stand for Parliament through his party, which is the PTI. So this seems to have happened over since last year, and he's obviously been silenced actually in Pakistan because the media haven't been able to report on this issue quite recently because the army have basically taken control.
how suspicious ought we to be, given that his downfall followed those comments to which I referred, where he wouldn't join in the chorus of condemning Russia and wanted to maintain a neutral stance, and now he's gone? I mean, should we be a bit sceptical about that trajectory?
I think yes, we should be, of course, but it's a concoction of things that have taken place as a result. So, yes, that might have been what had broken the camel's back, but he has been himself quite a divisive figure in terms of his relation to the West. So he doesn't like the West dictating how internal politics in Pakistan should be carried out. Of course, it's a sovereign nation. It's a nuclear power as well. So there are a number of elements that are taking place, and that could have been the reason why, he's been taken that far.
You say a divisive figure, but I've understood, insofar as I can, that in Pakistan he is a man of the people and has a. And when I speak to Pakistani people here in Britain about him, the overwhelming comment I get about him is that he was loved.
He was. In fact, he won the popular vote by 16 million. He got Shehbaz Sharif, who's the current interim Prime Minister, had only got 12 million. So he's clearly a popular figure. He's a popular figure with the diaspora here. And you can see it when he was taken to court. The whole country erupted. He's got the biggest majority in the Punjab region. So, he is, he did win, and he won decisively. But in terms of Western relations, he does seem to be divisive.
Laura, I have alluded to the thought that he was so famous. He was a David Beckham type character, in the 90s. Very glamorous, a brilliant sportsman and so on. And we followed his life in the way that we follow these sporting celebrities. And yet, given that he's had this downfall, he's now in jail, it doesn't feel like that our media is following that story with any kind of level of interest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when I saw this was a story on your show tonight, I realised I was so behind on the story. And so, obviously, coming on TV to discuss Imran Khan, looked up what's been going on. And I think it's really had quite scant coverage. And in a sense, that is the story. Now, of course, he's very popular in Pakistan for multiple reasons. And one is he talks about corruption in the two major families. He also casts aspersions, doesn't he, about the so-called neutrality of the Pakistani army and the involvement of the CIA. And it just makes you suspicious, actually, when there is very little coverage, that there's a bigger story underneath that's suppressing it. Why didn't I know more about the Imran Khan story? Partly I'm probably not reading the international pages enough, but I don't think it is just that. I mean, this is a huge story. You get a sense that the law has been weaponised against him in a similar way to Donald Trump and also in a smaller way to Boris Johnson. And it feels like a real flailing around of the state to prevent the popular candidate from holding power.
Wasiq, how do you read it? Am I right? Are we right in thinking that this should be a huge story here? He's one of ours, or he was one of ours for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be a huge story. It doesn't seem to be. And we were talking off air, and I mentioned that this just seems like it's business as usual.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say this is because since Pakistan's inception over 75 years ago, we've had 29 prime ministers during that period, and not one of them has actually carried out that full 5-year term. Yeah, so some of them have resigned, some of them have been jailed, one was assassinated. So there is something in the DNA of Pakistan that doesn't allow prime ministers to actually carry out what they need to do in the best interest of their people. And why, as a nation, we're not talking about it is a really important question. Just to put this into context, when Rishi Sunak was asked about this at Prime Minister's question, he just said, well, this is an internal matter and we're monitoring it. And that was about it.
What is life like for the people of Pakistan? I mean, in terms of rule of law, it's a democracy. How is life playing out for them? Standard of living and the rest.
So the standard of living is quite dire there. Inflation is at like over 30%. People are struggling. We've had the floods there. We've had a lot of corruption generally in those areas. and people are not, getting the standard of living that they need. And Pakistan obviously are trying their best to navigate that situation, which is perhaps why they've taken this so-called aggressive neutrality when it came to Russia in terms of perhaps oil sales or being able to export or import wheat and things like this. So they do have a really difficult task on their hands. But unfortunately, it is the Pakistani people who are suffering as a result.
How are we to read US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken saying now that we look forward to democratic elections in Pakistan? Why wouldn't we have been looking forward to democratic elections in Pakistan had Imran Khan continued to be in place?
It's really difficult to say. Obviously, the optics of it suggest that there's something deeper behind it. Only recently, I don't know if you're aware, The Intercept have actually published a cipher regarding US foreign policy in regards to Imran Khan, and what they allegedly have said is that we need to remove him so that we can get Pakistan back up to business as usual in terms of our foreign policy relations. So obviously, as the public see this, they do feel like there's something else happening there.
It's like he didn't stick to the script to continue the analogy.
Have there been riots, or will there be?
There have been riots, but the problem is that the Pakistani army are suppressing the riots, and they've also suppressed the media from actually reporting on these riots. So we don't actually get to see this internationally, what's happening. But if you talk to Pakistanis on the ground, they will tell you that we're out rioting, we're out protesting, we're standing up for our democratic right to have this person represent us, and that's being suppressed by the Pakistani army.
Also, wouldn't the more politically clever thing to do have been to let him stay in power and take the fall for the inflation?
You would think so.
Going to have to move on. Wasiq, thank you so much for your insights. It's a huge story, and I'd like to keep following it as the weeks come on. Still to come, as the former President Donald Trump faces dozens of criminal charges, does the President's son have his shady past swept under the rug? US politics aficionado Eric Ham joins us live from Washington very shortly. First, though, let's check up on the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. As we move through into the second part of the weekend, we'll see further showers, particularly across the northwest of the UK, and sunny spells towards the southeast. And this area of low pressure still brings in the showers and brisk winds towards the northwest, but further south and east, high pressure builds in. For the rest of the evening and overnight, we still have a few showers across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, 1 or 2 for western parts of England and Wales, but largely dry for most, with clear skies, especially towards the east of the UK. Temperatures overall generally 15 or 16 Celsius in towns and cities, a little lower in the countryside. So a fairly warm start to Sunday morning, plenty of sunny spells, a few showers across western areas. And then as we go through the day, many will have a fine day to come. Plenty of sunny spells, just a few showers bubbling up as we move through the afternoon. Showers most frequent across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. 1 or 2 of them could be heavy here. Still rather breezy around the coast. Temperatures reaching the low 20s, perhaps 25 towards the far southeast. Into Monday, little change for England and Wales, 1 or 2 showers around, though we will see more persistent rain returning across parts of Northern Ireland into western Scotland as we move through the day. Some of this rain turning heavy at times, the winds starting to pick up too, and temperatures in the low 20s. Tuesday and Wednesday largely dry, just a few showers in the north and temperatures above average.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. Former US President and in the running for a second term, Donald Trump is under sustained attack. Indictment after indictment is levelled at him, so that the prospect of a presidential candidate behind bars seems less and less unlikely as events unfold. It's all too fascinating for words. And joining me now from Fulton County, Georgia, to help me understand the twists and turns is Eric Ham, congressional staffer and best-selling author. Good evening, Eric.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I know, lovely. Thank you for being there. Eric, first of all, it seems to be non-partisan. It's an ignoble time in US politics, no? Allegations back and forth, not a good look for anyone.
No, that's absolutely right. In fact, we have seen perhaps over the last 2 decades, national politics in Washington have become increasingly polarized. In fact, many of the issues that have been seen as perhaps the third or the final rail in politics, typically areas where you don't see polarization, have become such now. And some of those issues include foreign policy. For example, the ongoing war in Ukraine. We have seen Democrats and Republicans fight over this issue, but it's not just Democrats and Republicans, it's Republican versus Republican. Now the lines are being drawn whether or not you support Vladimir Putin or you support Volodymyr Zelensky. And so that just gives you an indication of just how polarized and how toxic our politics in the United States have become.
A lot of people here in the UK talk about the emergence of a uni-party, that the distinctions, the previously understood distinctions between our two principal parties, for example, Conservative and Labour, have blurred to the point where you can't tell one from another. You know, is something similar happening in America where it's not about being Republican or Democrat anymore, that the divisions are running across different lines?
No, I think there's still very much that demarcation between Democrat and Republican. But also, I think what you're seeing, even within the two parties, for example, in the Democratic Party, you have what are known as progressives. And you have some progressives who continue to fight tooth and nail against the agenda of the current president Joe Biden, but also in that you have some Democrats who are seen as centrist or conservative Democrats. That would be people like Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. Now, that's a state where Donald Trump received the largest percentage of his vote than any other state. And so you have a Democrat who is and identifies as that in name, but many of his policies and many of his actions somehow suggest that he is perhaps more sympathetic to that of Republicans. On the Republican side, what you've seen is since Donald Trump has taken control of the party, there have been a number of Republicans who have either left the party altogether or have pretty much gone in hiding. And so now what you're seeing is you're seeing this MAGA Republican that is now pretty much the standard bearer. And it's also a determination of who actually gets elected, because oftentimes in both respective parties, what you're seeing play out is the primary system. So one of the major concerns that we're seeing is people on either side who do not want to get primary. And so much of that is determined by your leftist or your right politics in terms of if you're able to actually survive.
What about what seems from this side of the Atlantic a tit for tat going on? You know, every time I saw a piece on Fox News, every time there was news about questionable behaviour by Hunter Biden or the Biden family, it was almost immediately followed by an indictment for Trump. You know, is it desperate distraction by a beleaguered incumbent? Anytime he or they are accused of something, the only defence they can come up with is just to indict Trump for something else.
Well, I think we see that play out on both sides of the aisle where, Washington has become a place where it's not necessarily about getting anything done more so than it is about stopping the other side from actually getting something done. And so I think what you're seeing here now play out particularly is there is a group of Republicans, particularly who are in control of the House of Representatives, who have moved to this brand of politics where it's about attacking the Bidens and also placing this moniker on the Bidens in a way, I think, to muddy the waters or somehow show or highlight or underscore that the Biden family is very similar to many of the same attacks that we saw on the Trump family over those 4 years that President Trump was in office. I think the difference, however, is unlike the Trumps, Joe Biden does not have Hunter Biden, who many in America recognize as perhaps a wayward or black sheep of the family. He has not, and nor does he serve in this administration.
No. Now, I've also got a guest in the studio with me, Eric, Laura Dodsworth. We're fascinated as a nation, as individuals, by what happens in Washington, what happens with American politics. What do you make of this, the level to which the debate seems to have dropped between Democrat and Republican or whatever?
It's terrible. A couple of things really strike me. I mean, first of all, Congress subpoenaed Meta, that's Facebook, to provide files because the FBI had said that they'd only met Facebook once about the Hunter Biden laptop story and that they hadn't known that it was true. And this was patently untrue. There are reams of communications. I mean, this is lying at the highest level to suppress a story that would have damaged Biden in the election. That's the first thing. The second thing is, what are they doing? Because isn't it obvious that all these indictments, what they do is they end up portraying Trump as the most fearsome candidate that the Democrats are up against, and his fundraising has swelled, his popularity has soared. And I think, well, if I can work out that would happen, what are they playing at?
That's a good question, Eric. What are they playing at? As Laura says, it just does seem to be the Democrats playing into Republican hands in making Trump, more and more someone they will feel motivated to vote for, to defend, to stand up with.
I think we have to be careful in terms of how we engage in this discussion, particularly as if what is happening to Donald Trump is actually coming from Democrats. And it's not. It's coming from the state itself. Now, people will say, well, Joe Biden is in control of that state. But in the United States, what we have seen, particularly with the White House and the Justice Department, The White House, for decades, have tried to maintain a wall of independence between the White House and the Justice Department, so it doesn't appear as though there is a thumb being placed on the scale. And so, for example, in the case of Hunter Biden, what people may not be aware of is the U.S. attorney who has been investigating and who actually created this deal that is now blown up with Hunter Biden. That was actually a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney who Joe Biden kept on as the U.S. attorney to continue to engage in that case. And now we see that he has been made a full special counsel, which gives him greater independence to pursue the matter. But what we have, but we have to be clear that at least what we're seeing here is this administration has tried to maintain some distance between the personal of Joe Biden and, of course, the law enforcement, which certainly has every right to go after Hunter Biden for both his tax dealing and his criminal activities as it relates to this gun charge.
Eric Khan, trust me, I've got about another 20 questions that I wanted to ask you. I have simply been beaten by time, but author and political pundit, thank you so much for your insights this evening. We'll speak again, I hope. Now, I have to interrupt that conversation because coming up, water voles. Yes, you heard it here. Water voles are being released at a secret location in Cumbria, and we'll hear why the endangered species will hopefully make a comeback. Back in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to me, Neil Oliver Live. Conservationists are helping water voles stage a comeback in Cumbria. Once widespread all over the British archipelago, the critters have been all but driven to extinction in recent decades. The number's down from 8 million to just over 100,000. My final guest tonight is ecologist Derek Gow, a key player in the effort to reinstate the species in the Lake District. Hello, Derek. Delighted to have you.
Hi, Neil. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Nice to be here.
What happened to cause the near disappearance of the water vole in the United Kingdom?
Well, what happened, if you look back far enough, is that we drained all the wetlands there were in Britain to the point where there's only 1% of them left. And then we killed animals like the beaver, which create habitat for water voles and frogs and dragonflies and a whole host of other species. And then we pushed them over centuries into a very narrow line along the edges of the rivers and streams and canals. And now, because of intensive agriculture and because of a vastly changed landscape, it's very difficult for these little creatures to hang on in environments like that. But in Cumbria, what's happened is the RSPB and partners have created significant pool mosaics in the uplands of valley systems like Swindale, and that's why we're reintroducing water voles back into those.
What is the part that is played usefully in the ecosystem by water voles? What's their job, their role?
Okay, they have multifold roles. One is that they're Britain's largest vole species. So if you're a marsh harrier or a heron or whatever else is feeding in a wetland, then this is the Big Mac of the vole world as far as you're concerned. So they provide a huge abundance of food, or would do normally, otherwise in circumstances that are appropriate. Also, they're nature's water gardeners. They live along the edges of rivers and streams. They make burrow systems that things like frogs and toads and newts use to overwinter in. Grass snakes use them as well, and they prune the sweet plants and allow other plants that otherwise wouldn't predominate in those environments to have a chance of growing and succeeding. So they provide those functions, and in that they're incredibly significant.
When will you know if this project that you're embarking upon now is a success?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a few years in the understanding, so there'll be several years of monitoring. But we've run a number of projects like this before. I mean, one of the most successful was in the Queen Elizabeth Forest Park in Argyll, and the water vole population that we re-established there, in conjunction with the Forestry Commission and the National Park, now occupies an area of about 100 square miles and is expanding rapidly and doing very well. So we're utterly confident from the background we have with regard to this species that we can put them back into environments, and if the circumstances are right, and additionally you use modern technology to control introduced North American mink, which predate them in a way that no native predator does, that they will succeed and survive and go on to do very well.
It's lovely. I'm always delighted to hear about some or other little critter that's being reinstated and given a foothold once again in the wonderful ecosystem that is ours in this archipelago. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. That's it. It's 7 o'clock. This is Neil Oliver Live on TV Online and on DAB Plus Radio. That's all we have time for this evening. Thank you to all of my guests. Thank you to all for watching and listening. Thank you, Laura. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Back at the same time next week. Up next, it's the wonderful Emma Webb standing in for Father Calvin Robinson.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. So as we move through into the second part of the weekend, we'll see further showers, particularly across the northwest of the UK, and sunny spells towards the southeast. And this area of low pressure still brings in the showers and brisk winds towards the northwest, but further south and east, high pressure builds in. For the rest of the evening and overnight, we still have a few showers across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, one or two for western parts of England and Wales, but largely dry for most, with clear skies, especially towards the east of the UK. Temperatures overall, generally 15 or 16 Celsius in towns and cities, a little lower in the countryside. So a fairly warm start to Sunday morning, plenty of sunny spells, a few showers across western areas. And then as we go through the day, many will have a fine day to come. Plenty of sunny spells, just a few showers bubbling up as we move through the afternoon. Showers most frequent across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. One or two of them could be heavy here. Still rather breezy around the coast. Temperatures reaching the low 20s, perhaps 25 towards the far southeast. Into Monday, little change for England and Wales, 1 or 2 showers around, though we will see more persistent rain returning across parts of Northern Ireland into western Scotland as we move through the day. Some of this rain turning heavy at times, the winds starting to pick up too, and temperatures in the low 20s. Tuesday and Wednesday largely dry, just a few showers in the north and temperatures above average.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome, welcome. This is Calvin's Common Sense Crusade with me, Emma Webb, on